Well, as I mentioned before, we're in the middle of Lent, and this happens to be our fifth Sunday. Now, I guess I won't put you on the spot, but just to yourselves, have you been keeping up with anything you've started fasting from, or anything that you wanted to? Wonderful, I see a few hands. Beautiful. I was actually gonna give up procrastinating, but I said, I'll leave it for next year. So yeah, Lent is not just about giving up things, but as I mentioned the first Sunday of Advent, it is about replacing what you're giving up and actually practicing something new, maybe something more positive. Now, you may or may not remember the acronyms or the acronym, and I had a couple of different things for the acronym. And for Lent, L-E-N-T, and it's let's eliminate negative thoughts. Let's say that together. Let's eliminate negative thoughts. And since, as Aristotle said, nature abhors a vacuum, if we're removing something, let's put something in place. So let's replace with a new acronym for L-E-N-T, and it's let's encourage new thoughts. Together, let's encourage new thoughts. It's like you guys knew it already. So yeah, we got, of course, Lent, the 40 days, minus the Sundays. Don't ask me why they do that. But it is about transformation. It is about getting ready, preparation. And of course, all this is in preparation for what's coming up in a couple of weeks already, which is the Holy Week, Easter Sunday, and all that good stuff. So we call this Sunday, the fifth Sunday, well, I shouldn't say we, but traditionally it's called the Passion Week. And it is associated with the story where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus was the brother of Martha and Mary, and you may recall the story where they're in, Jesus goes with the disciples to their home, and while Martha is getting things ready and everything, Mary is not helping her with anything, but she is instead anointing God's feet with her hair. And Martha actually complains about that. And Jesus basically lets her know that Mary's actually doing the highest thing that she could be doing right now. Because as he mentioned, he would not be with them for long. I was thinking about the fact that Lazarus says that he was dead for 4 days. And in the Bible, there's definitely a lot to do with the numerology, but 4 doesn't usually come off, anywhere. We all got the 3, and anything divisible by 3, the Trinity, the 12 disciples. And except for the 40 days or 40 years, we got the 4. And I thought, well, what does 4 mean really metaphysically? And it has to do with stability, with foundation. And it says that the 4 also has to do with our 4 core elements as a human, which is the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. So think about what Lazarus, I guess you can think of Lazarus was in the tomb for 4 days working on this so that he can have renewed life. And we also know, well, you may or may not know, but basically it is thought that that story about Lazarus and Jesus bring him back to life after 4 days, it was a precursor to what he was going to show us that he could do to himself. So I think of it as he was showing that it wasn't just for him to be resurrected, but he resurrected somebody else. And to me, that means that it's for any of us to allow ourselves to be resurrected. Now, the way I think about this, and we don't have to think of it as, when the physical body goes away. I'm sure you've heard it before here. Every day, at some point in our day, or maybe multiple times during the day, we are crucifying the old and resurrecting the new. When you're working on yourself, you're working on something like in Lent to get rid of stuff that does not serve you so that you can be reborn again, resurrected, that new person for that next thing. And yes, I'm going to talk about the power of love. I think the power of love is a wonderful way to be working on that resurrection every day in any situation that you have. And I'm calling it the power of love because, as I'm sure most of you by now know, that in Unity we work with the 12 powers that our Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore brought about, and where he relates each power to a different part of your physicalness. The power of love, surprise, surprise, is by your heart. Now, the power of love is also associated with the disciple John, whom we know that it is said that it was the one he loved. Well, it just so happens that in this story, we hear that Jesus also loved Lazarus. Specifically, it says in the Bible that he loved them. And there's the one time in the Bible where it says that Jesus wept. When Lazarus' sister Mary goes to tell him that he's dead, and she's weeping, we read that Jesus wept as well. So we can think of as the power of love maybe give him that extra energy to be able to raise Lazarus from the dead, even though he'd been dead for 4 days. We hear that it even, I'm going to say nicely, smelled coming out of the tomb before he had somebody remove the stone and Lazarus come out to have a new life. Along the lines with love, I think a good way to resurrect ourselves every day or every moment that we have a chance. I know you've never heard this here before, but use forgiveness, practice forgiveness. We all know what that means, right? Now, I used to think that forgiveness was about the other person. The other person did this to me. That other person did something wrong. Those are the people over there. But forgiveness is really about yourself, about how you see what's going on in the world, about how you take in whatever story is happening to you, and you turn it around instead of saying, being the victim really, and saying, that person did that to me, this person did that. Let's make it, what am I to learn from this? And it is up to me how I see it, how I experience it, and what I may or may not learn from it. So forgiveness is about looking within. And I'm not talking about blaming yourself either. If you are, forgive yourself. Let it go. I think last time I was here, I mentioned about what we think is good or bad that is happening to us. Let's try to see it more as a neutral thing. It's just something that is happening. When you think about water is just a neutral thing, right? It could be something negative. If you happen to be drowning or there's a nasty storm, you can think of it as a negative thing. But without water, we would eventually die also, right? We need it to stay hydrated. I think it changes from what I understand, but throughout most of our lives, I think it starts to be less and less, but average, give or take, 75% of our body is water. Does that relate a little something to what the earth is also? Everything that is within is without. Everything that is without is within. So why not just see everything as it's just something that is happening for us to learn from? The first person I heard talk about this concept, it was Neil Donald Walsh, where he says that God is expressing himself, herself, itself through us. We are God's eyes, we are God's ears, we are God's hands and feet. That's why we talk about here that it is up to us to be of service to anyone or anywhere that we can be of service. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. You may see me up here giving this message, and that's what I do, but in your own life, it doesn't have to be anything like this. If you are like me, well, at least I was petrified to be up here speaking to a crowd of people. You don't necessarily have to do that. Everybody has a gift. And I'm sure by now you all know what that gift is. Maybe a couple of you might think, oh, I don't know if that's really what I'm supposed to be doing, whatever gift. I was giving somebody, I'm going to say one of my nephews' advice a couple days ago. And yes, it's silly, but just like Nike, just do it. Whatever comes to your mind, the way I said it is, if something comes to your mind, what do you think is the next step? Take action, right? And we, of course, know this. We teach this from one of our unity principles. The fifth principle that it talks about that it doesn't matter that you know all the other principles about, God is all there is, and we are that divinity, and our thoughts control what we experience, and that our prayers and meditation align us with God's mind. It's great to know that, but we need to take action. So whatever comes into your mind, and I dare say, when it's so subtle that you just kind of catch it, when you're in the middle of like mindless something, and it comes to you, oh, this would be good to do. Guess what? Maybe it's time to do it. And it's not for somebody else to do maybe, but for yourself to do. I've mentioned it before, and I don't know if you remember, but I've said it a couple of times at least. Maybe it took 3 times where it came to me that I needed to go into ministerial school. And the first couple of times, like, no way, that's not for me. It's crazy. I've never seen myself being up here talking to a crowd. But in spite of that, I remember a few years ago at work, somebody started a Toastmasters club. And if you don't know what Toastmasters is when you go and you practice speaking in front of people. And I don't know why I did it. I had no intentions of being, but something told me just do it, and I did it. And it has happened to me over and over again. When the classes became available for what we call SEE classes, spiritual education and enrichment, and we were told, if you want to take it for credit, go ahead and do it. Again, Something told me just do it, just take the credit. And when I actually made the decision to go into ministerial school, it happened for me. That I was mostly done with all my SEE credits so I can go directly into ministerial school. Now, if you're worried about how to live, what to do, I think we all go through that. We think when something comes up for us to do, we're afraid, it's like, what if I fail? What if this is not for me to do? What if I make a fool of myself? I've heard it said recently that if you think of something and you're afraid to do it, guess what? Maybe you're supposed to be doing that. We've said it here before. If you're not moving, if you're not growing, you're dying. So let's be alive. Don't just stand back and let life pass you by. If you're afraid of something, give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? You find out that it wasn't meant for you, but you may learn something from it. Every single thing that I've done throughout my life, I've learned from. A quick memory I have, eventually I became an audio engineer. I studied for that. And when I moved from New York a couple of months ago, it's been a while, I came to Orlando and I couldn't find a job in what I had studied for and what my career was at that point. And I just took what came up. And of all things, it was working in a hotel as a front desk clerk. And I know there's not many hotels around this area. But you know what? I ended up being there for 6 years. And I moved up, and I even worked with the front desk, and I worked with the housekeeping crew. And then I was able to find my way back to what my career was. And I worked at the convention center for almost 3 decades. And when I started working there, and because of how that situation is, convention center, there's a lot of people coming in from different countries, all the different things that happen there. I always thought it was a good thing that I had the experience working at the hotels. I was able to speak to people easier. I can relate to them better. Because yes, for any technical people here, you know that we're not always the most approachable or emotional. But that helped me to be approachable and to be able to speak better. And I dare say, as I stand here in front of you now, that was also helping me for what I'm doing here. When I communicate with you guys one-on-one, that has helped me. I have grown out of that shell that I had, that I was in fear of speaking. What should I say? What if I got nothing to say? Guess what? If you have nothing to say, then it's time to listen, right? So listen to your inner voice. If you wish, listen to God. What is it that you are supposed to do? What is it that you're supposed to be? Why not? We here in Unity say that the doing does not come before the being. You have to be first before you can do. So be alive. Be about taking action. Be about forgiving. Be about being compassionate. Be love. And as we understand that Mahatma Gandhi said, be the love you want to see in the world.